Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'll be discussing the truly remarkable 1997 romantic disaster epic Titanic, as directed by James Cameron. Now I did indeed have the good fortune to be able to get caught up in all of the hysteria around its original release, and to this day I believe the film ranks as the one I have seen pretty much the most at the cinema. Originally, I think I'd seen it around about 5 or 6 times at the very least. What with school, friends, family, and each time was always as exhilarating as the last. Not counting the amount of times I've seen it on video, DVD, and every other format going. It really is simply one of the most captivating movies that I've ever seen, and even to this day is simply beyond reproach. And so when the opportunity came up to see it remastered in 4K back on the big screen to celebrate its 25th anniversary, it was an opportunity too good to pass up. But this isn't a review for the 4K release specifically, moreover the movie in general. But let's just say that the 4K release on the big screen is simply stunning, and the film still, absolutely still, rivals anything that has been made today. In fact, it looked like it was only being made yesterday, with a crisp, fresh, just out of the box feel. Absolutely exquisite. I was also apprehensive about taking our 9-year-old son along. He hasn't never seen the film before. It's not kind of his thing by a long shot, and indeed his classmates had told him that it was a big pile of rubbish. It's just a love story, they said. And in this we did have a bit of a fight on our hands to kind of get him there in the first place. But, and to be honest, this was no surprise to me, given my love for the film. He relished every minute. He was in awe and totally spellbound. And it was an absolute delight, to kind of relive some of my own memories through him on this first viewing of what is simply a true spectacle of a movie. I do actually think it is an absolute testament to the story and the immersive experience that Cameron has yet again weaved into this movie. Be it a love story, a disaster movie, an action epic, the level of captivation and emotional involvement that even for a 9-year-old is simply one to behold. And this is particularly remarkable given the film's extremely warranted 3 hours plus runtime. Titanic mixes both historical events and fictionalized story elements to bring the impact and sheer scale of the tragedy that unfolded, and the events that transpired to sink one of the grandest ships of its time, in what was and still could be reflected as one of the most tragic shipping disasters the world has ever seen, when, on April the 14th, 1912, the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg and later, that same evening, sank into the depths of the freezing Atlantic Ocean, with some 2,200 souls on board, of which only some 700 or so survived. This retelling of the tragedy is witnessed through the eyes of a romance which kind of blossoms in the most unlikely of circumstances between a first and third class passenger, Rose DeWitt Bukater as played by Kate Winslet, and Jack Dawson as played by Leonardo DiCaprio, respectively, after Jack saves Rose from going overboard. Feeling stifled and kind of boxed in by her upcoming marriage to Calden Hockley, the heir to a Pittsburgh steel fortune, that's what I want to say, played by Billy Zane, and her life in the upper class, Rose sees a spark in Jack that ignites her rebellious and more adventurous side. Jack shows Rose what it's like to really live life to the full, seizing every opportunity with limited means and working with everything life presents. But if their relationship didn't have enough to contend with, coming from different walks of life and all, there's the fact that, of course, they're aboard the Titanic, and so their love certainly hits a few speed bumps along the way. From their chance meeting to their passionate embrace, right down to their plight and desperation as they kind of frantically try to survive the impending disaster, We follow the two star-crossed lovers through it all, intimately, with a love and desire that knows no bounds. So, in saying all of that, we're Oliver's school friends, right? Is this all but just a love story? No, not by a long shot. There's no denying that the romantic angle is the most prominent feature of the movie by far. However, this adds a real human element to the tragedy that a more modern audience can get behind. It gives the film a focus to move us through the various events leading up to that tragic night, giving us something to latch onto, to root for, to connect with. But all this aside, once that iceberg hits, this movie becomes something totally different altogether, depicting the disaster and tragedy that unfolds with an unrelenting force, yet a true and based reverence for the plight and suffering of those involved. Scenes which not only strive to kind of entertain, but also those that offer respect and a deep emotional viewpoint. This movie deserves, and more than earns, the respect it has garnered over the years, and indeed its substantial box office, being the #1 film in terms of box office takings since its release until James Cameron's own 2009 science fiction movie Avatar knocked it off its perch. And they have been slogging it out ever since, with re-release after re-release after. You get the gist. Both Winslet and DiCaprio really do bring an amazing energy and searing passion to the roles of Rose and Jack. Just watching them is totally bewitching, and moments, even those with their clothes on, are hot, steamy, not in a raunchy way, but even some of the more risque scenes are delicately handled and romantically set. There is some real old school romance that's, hard not to ignore, with a real kind of power and emotion once again that really draws you in to these two characters with some absolutely amazing chemistry. It sizzles. But yes, the action, the suspense, and just the sheer scale of what has been imagined here simply brings the Titanic back to life in all of its majestic glory. An absolute sight to behold, and even though by today's standards the Titanic has kind of been dwarfed by many modern cruise ships, some of which are now over, if not more so, than double its size, Cameron ensures its legacy and majesty live on. The attention to detail is pristine, and like no other rendition of the vessel on celluloid has ever achieved. Every inch of this magnificent vessel is immortalised and mastered with the utmost skill and veneration. We can literally smell the crisply pressed linens and feel that ocean breeze running through our hair as the liner steams across the Atlantic. For me, this movie would be nothing more, however, than a visual spectacle if it wasn't for James Horner's most committed and iconic score that emphasises the grandeur, the finesse, and ultimately the heartbreaking tragedy that occurs. The score is one of the very few I have ever listened to away from the movie itself that literally tells the story on its own. No visuals, no dialogue, just simply some absolutely spellbinding and captivating instrumentals. So powerful and descriptive in its own right. Not many soundtracks at all have resonated with me in quite the same way, nor have had such a lasting effect. I have been enamoured with the score ever since I watched the film for that very first time. And for me, it is simply just as iconic. Personally, I think it's the score that more than makes this film what it is. At first, it's subdued as we kind of build up to that first epic sighting of the Titanic. And then, all of a sudden, in all of its glory, Horner's score kind of goes into full swing and kind of powers through the movie's visuals as we're treated to those first epic shots of the liner. And from there, it simply goes from strength to strength, setting a truly powerful sense of emotion and sentiment along the way, with some loud and beating notes as well as we kind of scramble through that chaos. He brings in just the right crescendos to ramp up into the action, and then when needed, yields a number of more melodic, sentimental pieces that absolutely rock you to your core, emphasising and highlighting some of the film's more poignant and heartfelt moments. For me, this is probably one of Horner's most iconic and prestigious soundtracks, and a truly lasting and acclaimed legacy. The finale itself is nothing short of a cinematic spectacle either. Seamlessly, it moves from the romance between Rose and Jack into an all-out, tearful, yet heart-pounding race against time, witnessing events as they may have transpired that infamous night, which are both shocking and heart-rendering. Knowing this is actually based on a true story just makes this all the more gut-wrenching to watch. Overall, this is a true piece of modern cinematic history that continues to draw a new and old audience alike. The Titanic was billed as the ship of dreams, and Cameron makes this dream a reality. Everything is done with such incredible detail and respect for the ship itself, the people, and the events that transpired, that I'm literally always simply in awe of its commitment, splendour, and scope. It's a juggernaut of a movie, pure spectacle that weaves an engaging and passionate romance against the plight, drama, and peril of one of the world's most infamous and tragic shipping disasters, with a real human focus and emotional drive. With a beautiful soundtrack, engaging characters, strong dialogue, and a majestic presence, this movie is one to behold. And no matter how many times I've watched it, the level of emotion, the power of that music, the visuals, the heated and amorous embrace, and the tragic events that occurred leave me welling up every time. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for my movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst Movie Talk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.